Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. I think it's fortuitous that I had all of this trail cam footage of turkeys on my property up north that I got to use for this episode about Thanksgiving. Today we're talking about one book, and it's Thanksgiving, and it's Thanksgiving right here by James W. Baker. It is subtitled The Biography of an American Holiday. And make no mistake about it, this is a work of cultural anthropology. It's a fantastic book. It's the best nonfiction book I read this past year. So I wanted to get it in. It's, what better time than now? University of New Hampshire Press put this book out, and it was published in, this was published in 2009. That's not that old. So, all right. So this is in the author's own words. I took notes. I have to use my notes because I want to do this book justice too. All right. So in the author's own words, this is a detective story. He wanted to piece together the national holiday Thanksgiving and give us a look on how that originated. And in his words, it originated with the New England Puritan holy days, but it goes back further than that. He talks about fasting days in the United Kingdom. And in 1621, it became a regional observance. Cut that out. In 1621, it became a regional observance. There had been a declaration by the Continental Congress in 1777 for Thanksgiving as a day of observance, and then George Washington declared a national Thanksgiving observance in 1789. So it goes back to not only the era of the Pilgrims, which is the image we most associate with Thanksgiving, but to fasting days in England. So it does have its origins in religious observance. Abraham Lincoln was the one that revitalized the national holiday in November of 1863, and from there it takes off. It becomes more and more a prominent holiday that is celebrated by people around the nation. It became a so-called New England type of Thanksgiving, and the image of the Pilgrims and the Native Americans was set the tone and established the imagery of Thanksgiving as we know it today. This book goes into incredible detail, including reproducing some of the images from the old magazines in the 1800s and so forth. It's fantastic. That would be the Currier and Ives imagery, newspaper illustrations of Thanksgivings held in churches at the time. He talks about the different foods, the Thanksgiving recipes that were handed down from the Pilgrims on, the influence of the Native Americans, the turkey, the geese, the chickens. Sometimes other animals would serve as a Thanksgiving feast. There were turkey shooting contests in those days years ago to get the best turkey, and they'd have a contest out of it. I was fascinated by the detail he puts into each section. So with the dinners, for example, which today we all know what the traditional dinner is, but it also included chickens and geese, as I mentioned, puddings, pies, apples, pumpkins. And this really made me laugh when I read it. Prior to teetotalism, yes, prior to teetotalism becoming a New England obsession, in other words, they laid off the sauce. Those are the author's words, New England obsession. A dinner often concluded with punch and ciders. Not much has changed, actually. It's come around my house, and we know how it is. Of course, now we have football on television. We have to watch that. The formal acceptance of Thanksgiving was a long, drawn-out process from the 1620s, and then in 1780 through 1880, we have a very long process of the imagery, the traditions being established in various regional sections of the country. The 19th century, and there are extensive in this book. He covers the 19th century imagery and art, which is the greatest proponent of Thanksgiving as we understand it today. Families sitting down at a Thanksgiving dinner. Norman Rockwell, for example, modern illustrator, is very well known for that. A lot of these images were published in Harper's Weekly in the 1860s and the 1870s. I used to subscribe to Harper's, which was the modern version of that magazine, many years ago. Anyways, the Harper's Weekly imagery and reportage had an enormous influence on it. The Native American influence is also covered at length. Now, this is where it gets kind of dicey. We have the imagery of, and the factual imagery of, the Native Americans were friendly to the Pilgrims, and they taught them things about preparing food and growing different types of things. And that's absolutely true, but there was also violence involved. And some of the illustrations that he reproduces in here shows a hunter with a flintlock rifle having been killed by the natives and his turkey stolen. The cover alone, which I'll have scanned up here for you, shows you the Americanization of the holiday in a very blatant illustration. So the bottom line is this: it's Thanksgiving is a traditional holiday yet, but it's a holiday that came out of a wide variety of different cultural events and historical events with various groups within the immigration community that happened here when they came over from England. The controversies continue to this day with the Native Americans, who have their own version called the Day of Mourning. The Native Americans are now enlightened, and they take the stance that something's been lost for them. It depends on what you think about that. I have mixed feelings on it. I think it's absolutely true. There was always a conflict there, but it's also true that the Native Americans were kind to the Pilgrims, at least initially. And that is a very complicated. Native American rights is something that I'm quite familiar with. I live on a reservation part of the year, and I'm friends with many Native Americans, so I understand their perspective quite well. At least I hope I do. It should be, and I think for most people, Thanksgiving is a time when everybody's welcome to the table. In this country, that's what it should be. I'm sure that given the state of the country as it is today, it's not the case, because there's a lot of haters out there. But most of the traditional people would invite people to the table. All types are welcome, and have a prayer together, and you can have your dinner. And the reason I mention that is not to incite anger with some of you, but these are the historical facts that go back a long way. So, this book is, as I said, this is a work of cultural anthropology. And by that I mean anthropology is separate from archaeology, by the way. I've had people ask me, what are you talking about? It's just digging up bones. No, anthropology is much different than archaeology, okay? It's the study of the cultures. It's a study of different habits and processes of civilization, of humanity, regional and national, and by the continent. Cultural anthropology doesn't have barriers whatsoever. It is not a phrase that is often used. I picked it up many decades ago from studying with a friend of mine who has a PhD in anthropology. And it's good to understand cultural anthropology. Most nonfiction can be categorized, if it's done well like this, as a work of cultural anthropology. You're going to learn the basic facts in a very objective manner. This is what happened. There's no agenda, no political or religious agenda. These are what the people said and did. So he does this. James W. Baker. I'm not familiar with him at all. My copy is a used copy, but I'm keeping it because I really like this book. I think it was really a great piece of research. Obviously took years to piece this together. He put it together in multiple sections. There are 12 chapters. Some of the chapter headings are A Thanksgiving Detective Story, New England's Puritan Holy Days, the traditional New England Thanksgiving, the classic New England Thanksgiving dinner, The Nation Embraces Thanksgiving, 1780, 1880, 19th century holiday imagery in literature and art. Fascinating stuff. Imagining the Holiday Parades, Patriotism, and Consumption. The Post-War Thanksgiving, New Myths and Old Thanksgiving, Now, Then, and Forever. Great book about Thanksgiving. So, with that said, I was going to crack a joke, because I have one, but I'm not going to crack a joke about it, because I think I'm just going to leave it be. I think that the main thing here is, if you're interested in history, this is a great book for you to read to learn about Thanksgiving. And on a personal level, I want to wish each and every one of you watching this a happy and safe Thanksgiving, no matter who you are or where you are. Stay well, stay happy, feed your brain, read a book.